The German Shepherd's teeth sank into the leash with such force that the nylon began to fray. Luna had never done anything like this before. Not in 3 years of late-night walks through their quiet Cologne neighborhood. Her hackles stood straight up, her body rigid as steel, and a low growl rumbled from deep in her chest. Something invisible to human eyes had triggered pure animal terror, and she was trying to save them both. "Luna, what's wrong?" Marcus whispered, his breath coming out in visible puffs despite the August heat. That's when he noticed it, the cold. Not a gentle evening breeze, but an unnatural, bone-deep chill that seemed to emanate from the intersection ahead. The streetlight at the corner of Bergisch Gladbachstrasse flickered once, twice, then steadied, casting long shadows across the empty pavement. Luna whimpered and pulled backwards so hard that Marcus nearly lost his grip. His hands were shaking now, though he couldn't tell if it was from the cold or from something more primal. The same instinct that was screaming at Luna to run. He took one step forward. Luna yelped and sat down, refusing to move. The temperature dropped again, and Marcus could see his breath forming thick clouds in the summer air. Somewhere in the darkness of that side street, something felt wrong. Not dangerous in the way of a prowling animal or a suspicious stranger, but wrong in a way that bypassed logic and went straight to the primitive part of his brain that still remembered when humans were prey. He made a decision that would change everything. "Okay, girl. Okay. We'll go the other way." They turned around and Luna immediately relaxed, trotting eagerly away from whatever waited in that darkness. Marcus glanced back once. For just a moment, he thought he saw a shadow move between the streetlights. Tall, human-shaped, but somehow wrong in its proportions. Then it was gone. The next morning at the dog park, Marcus couldn't shake the memory of that cold. He watched Luna play with her usual friends, acting completely normal in the daylight. Maybe he'd imagined it. Maybe the late shift at work was finally getting to him. He was about to leave when Frau Schmidt approached, her elderly dachshund Maxie waddling beside her. "You're Luna, she's a big dog, yes?" Frau Schmidt asked, her weathered face creasing with concern. Marcus nodded. "Did she ever refuse to walk somewhere? Act frightened, for no reason?" The old woman's eyes were sharp, waiting for his answer. Marcus felt his stomach tighten. "Last night, actually, near the corner of Bergisch Gladbach and that side street, she completely panicked." Frau Schmidt's expression shifted to something between relief and vindication. "Maxie, too. 2 months now, she won't go past that corner. I thought I was crazy. I thought maybe she smelled a fox or something, but it's every single time." She leaned closer, lowering her voice. "And it's not just us." Within an hour, Marcus had spoken to 6 other dog owners. The stories were identical, disturbingly so. Thomas, a university student who jogged with his husky at dawn, said his dog had bitten through his leash trying to escape that street 3 weeks ago. A young couple with 2 golden retrievers reported both dogs reacting with terror on separate occasions. An elderly man with a calm, well-trained border collie said his dog had urinated in fear, something she'd never done before. When they got within 20 meters of that intersection, every single incident centered on the same 3-block stretch of residential street. Every single dog showed the same behavior: terror, refusal to proceed, desperate attempts to retreat. And every single owner reported the same detail they couldn't explain: an unnatural cold, even in the middle of summer. Marcus pulled out his phone and opened a neighborhood map. He marked each location where someone had reported an incident. The pattern was undeniable. Whatever was happening, it was concentrated around 2 specific apartment buildings on that side street. Buildings that looked completely ordinary in the daylight. Tidy flower boxes in windows, children's bicycles chained to railings. Nothing remotely sinister. But his hands were shaking again as he stared at the map. Luna pressed against his leg, sensing his unease. "I need to know what's going on," he said to Thomas, who had stayed to compare notes. The younger man nodded slowly. "I've lived here 4 years. That street was always normal. Whatever this is, it started recently. Like maybe 3 or 4 months ago?" 3 or 4 months. Marcus made a mental note and decided to do what any rational person would do when faced with an inexplicable mystery. He would research. He would investigate. He would find a logical explanation for why an entire neighborhood's dogs had suddenly developed a collective phobia of 3 blocks of ordinary residential street. He didn't know yet that some mysteries have answers that make less sense than the questions. He didn't know that by nightfall, he would uncover something that would make him wish he'd simply taken Luna's warning and stayed away. The Cologne Municipal Library smelled like old paper and dust, but their digital archives were surprisingly comprehensive. Marcus sat at a computer terminal, searching through newspaper records, city planning documents, and historical photographs. The street had been built in 1974, part of a wave of post-war residential development. Nothing unusual in the construction records. No accidents during building. No crimes of note in the decades since. Just a quiet, unremarkable street where working families raised children and elderly residents tended their gardens. He was about to give up when he switched his search to social media. The neighborhood Facebook group had been active for years, mostly complaints about parking and celebrations of local festivals. But in recent posts, a different tone emerged. A woman named Petra had written 4 months ago, "Does anyone else feel uncomfortable walking on Steinweg at night? I can't explain it, but something feels off." 17 comments followed, most dismissive, a few agreeing. Then 3 months ago, someone named Hans posted, "My daughter won't sleep in her bedroom anymore. Says she sees a sad lady outside the window. We live on Steinweg. Getting concerned." Marcus's pulse quickened. He scrolled further. 2 months ago, "Cold spots on Steinweg? Anyone else notice the temperature just drops randomly on that street after dark?" Last month, "I keep hearing footsteps outside my apartment at night. Security camera shows nothing. Steinweg resident wondering if I'm losing my mind." The posts multiplied. Shadow figures, whispers in German that no one could source, a pervasive feeling of sadness and dread. And every single post referenced the same street, Steinweg, the side street where Luna had panicked. Marcus needed to know more. He approached the reference librarian, a middle-aged woman with kind eyes. "I'm researching the history of Steinweg," he said carefully. "Has anything unusual happened there recently?" The librarian's expression changed. She glanced around, then lowered her voice. "You're not the first person to ask. There were 2 deaths, both suicides, both in the last 4 months." She pulled up the death notices on her screen, keeping her voice barely above a whisper. "Karen Hoffman, 28 years old, died in her apartment on Steinweg in April. The landlord found her after neighbors complained about the smell. She'd been dead for almost a week." Marcus felt sick. The librarian continued. Then, 6 weeks later, her friend Alex Weber, 31, also on Steinweg, just 2 buildings down from Karen. He left a note, said he couldn't stop hearing her crying. Marcus sat in stunned silence. 2 deaths, both suicides, both on the same street where dogs now refuse to walk, and people reported shadows, whispers, and overwhelming sadness. The timing aligned perfectly with when the phenomena started. He thanked the librarian and walked outside, needing air. The bright afternoon sunshine felt surreal after learning about such darkness. He called his sister Elena, a psychology professor at the university. "Could collective grief cause mass hallucinations?" he asked without preamble. Elena paused. "That's a complex question. Shared trauma can definitely affect a community's perception. Hypervigilance, pareidolia, seeing patterns that aren't there. But it would be unusual for so many people to report identical experiences, and animals don't have the same psychological susceptibilities." She hesitated. "Marcus, what's this about?" He explained everything. Luna's reaction, the other dogs, the testimonies, the deaths. Elena listened without interrupting. "I think you should talk to the residents," she finally said. "Get their stories. Document what they experienced. Either you'll find a pattern that explains it rationally or—" She trailed off. "Or what?" Marcus asked. "Or you won't," Elena said quietly. "And that's actually more frightening than any ghost story." Over the next 3 days, Marcus knocked on doors along Steinweg. Some residents refused to talk. Others seemed relieved someone was finally asking questions. Frau Weber, who lived directly above where Karen had died, invited him inside. Her apartment was warm and tidy, but she kept glancing nervously at the windows. It was around midnight, she said, wringing her hands. I was walking home from my shift at the hospital. Suddenly, the air just changed. It got so cold I could see my breath in July. And then I heard it, a voice very quiet right next to my ear. It said, "Geh nach Haus." Go home, I ran. I've never run so fast in my life. And I felt it following me all the way to my door. Her eyes filled with tears. I knew Karen. She was a sweet girl, so sad after her boyfriend left. I should have checked on her more. Maybe if I had, she wouldn't have. Marcus documented 8 detailed testimonies. David, a university student visiting his girlfriend, described seeing a shadow figure that moved wrong, gliding instead of walking. The elderly couple on the 3rd floor woke simultaneously at exactly 3:17 in the morning, multiple nights in a row, to the sound of footsteps outside their window. The single mother whose daughter described the sad lady in detail, a description that matched Karen's appearance, though the child had never seen a photo. Every story contained the same elements: unnatural cold, overwhelming sadness, the sensation of being watched or followed, and the unshakable feeling that something wanted them gone. Marcus created a map with pins marking each reported incident. They clustered tightly around the 2 buildings where Karen and Alex had died. The concentration was undeniable. He consulted with a local paranormal investigator named Stefan, a serious man with a background in electrical engineering. Trauma can leave imprints, Stefan explained over coffee. Strong emotional energy. Some people theorize it's not ghosts in the traditional sense, but more like recordings, emotional echoes. Animals sense EMF fluctuations and infrasound frequencies that humans can't consciously detect. Stefan paused. But the interactive elements you're describing, the whispers, the following sensation, those suggest something more than a residual haunting. Those suggest intelligence, awareness. Marcus also spoke with a psychology professor who specialized in collective trauma. She emphasized confirmation bias, the power of suggestion, and grief-induced hypervigilance. Every rational explanation made sense individually, but none of them explained why his thermometer had shown that 15-degree temperature drop. None of them explained why dogs, who had no knowledge of the deaths, no exposure to social media posts, no reason to be influenced by human suggestion, all refused to walk past the same exact spot. He made his decision at 2 in the morning, staring at his notes. He would walk Steinweg himself. He would document whatever happened. He would either prove there was a rational explanation, or he would capture evidence of something science couldn't yet explain. Luna watched him with worried eyes as he gathered his equipment: phone camera, thermometer, audio recorder, flashlight. His friend Johann agreed to wait in a car at the end of the street as backup. "If I don't text you every 5 minutes, come find me," Marcus said, trying to sound more confident than he felt. It was 2:47 in the morning when Marcus and Luna approached Steinweg. The street was empty, silent except for the distant hum of traffic from the main road. Luna was calm initially, trotting beside him with her usual confidence. The temperature was a comfortable 22 degrees Celsius, normal late summer night. They walked slowly, Marcus keeping his phone ready to record. 2:51. They approached the first building, Alex's former residence. Luna's ears perked up. The thermometer dropped to 18 degrees. Marcus's breath became visible. "Okay," he whispered into his phone's microphone. "Definite temperature change. No rational source." Luna began to whine, a high-pitched sound of distress. The audio recorder was running, and when Marcus played it back later, he would hear what he missed in the moment. A faint sound like distant crying, coming from nowhere and everywhere at once. 2:54. They stood directly in front of Karen's former apartment. The temperature plummeted to 11 degrees. Luna's hackles rose and she began to growl, low and threatening, at a specific point on the sidewalk ahead. Marcus felt it then, a pressure in his chest, difficulty breathing, like the air itself had become thick and oppressive. "There's nothing there," he said aloud, trying to convince himself. But there was. He couldn't see it, but he felt it as surely as he felt the cold. A presence, and it was right in front of him. The audio recorder captured a whisper, clear enough that Marcus heard it too. "Bleib nicht hier." "Don't stay here." Luna went from growling to terrified whining. She threw her weight backward, nearly pulling Marcus off his feet. And then he felt it. Ice-cold pressure on his arm, like fingers wrapping around his bicep. He jerked away with a gasp. Whatever was there, it was touching him. His camera captured 3 frames of shadow, tall, humanoid, but with proportions that weren't quite right, impossibly long arms, a head that tilted at an unnatural angle. 2:57. Marcus ran. Luna ran. They sprinted toward Johann's car, and Marcus risked one glance backward. The shadow was following, gliding between the streetlights with fluid, impossible movement. They reached the car and dove inside. Luna was shaking. Marcus was shaking. His thermometer still read 11 degrees, though they were now 50 meters away from the spot. "Did you see it?" Johann asked, his face pale. Marcus could only nod. Later, reviewing the evidence in the safety of his apartment, Marcus watched the shadow figure appear and disappear in his footage. He listened to the whisper on the audio recording. He saw the temperature data, the timestamps, Luna's undeniable terror. He had his answer, though it brought no comfort. Something was on Steinweg, something connected to Karen and Alex, to their pain and their deaths. Whether it was their spirits unable to rest, or some manifestation of trauma so intense it had left a scar on reality itself, he couldn't say. The street remained quiet during the day, families going about their lives, unaware or unwilling to acknowledge what stirred after dark. Marcus still walks Luna at night, but they take a different route now. Most of the neighborhood does. The street where dogs won't walk remains empty after sunset, avoided by those who know and those who simply feel, on some instinctive level, that some places carry too much sorrow to bear. If you're struggling with depression or dark thoughts, please reach out. You're not alone. Contact a crisis helpline in your area. Your life matters. And if you want to stay safe on those late-night walks, keep your phone charged with Anchor power banks. Reliable power when you need it most, because some mysteries require documentation, and you never know when you'll need to call for help. Subscribe for more true stories from the streets where shadows walk.